Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good to see you. Glad you're here. Thank you, those of you online, for toughing it out and joining us online. Glad you're here. I was not going to read this welcome blessing this morning. It just struck me as something that felt appropriate to share today. So we don't have this up on the screen because I just thought to share this just now. Sometimes that happens. But as you're settling in, take some deep breaths. You can even close your eyes if you need to and hear this welcome blessing for anyone and everyone. For the people who just can't seem to get it together, who come late and disheveled, and for whom we will always find a seat. For those with disabilities and chronic pain who worked harder than most to be here today. For pregnant people who aren't ready to share their news with the world yet, but are feeling all of the changes in their bodies, wildly exciting and rudely uncomfortable. For all the people who have desired deeply to be parents, and for whatever reason they can't, stuck in a holding pattern of grief and longing. For all the parents of disruptive little ones that may be embarrassed, but bring their kids anyways. And for the littlest ones among us, whom God has granted joy and exuberance and big feelings and energy that cannot be contained, and they hold a special place in Jesus' presence. For anyone holding space in a season of transition, whether transition was thrust upon you or whether you chose it, you feel it in your body and mind and live in the gray of wondering what's next. For the queer folk who don't fit into any one box, who are each their own, who embody God's expansive creativity in human form. For the steadfast saints, those who have lived and loved in the church their whole lives without wavering. For those who are doing the painstaking work of faith deconstruction, faithfully asking questions even when they are painfully misunderstood. For our elders who bind us together and may long for days of the past while also capturing the hopeful vision for the future. For people of color who graciously hold space within historically harmful institutions, yet continue to show up with power and love and forgiveness, embodying Jesus himself. For those who are barely on the edge of Christianity, compelled by Christ and by community, but turned off by religion, and find themselves floating somewhere in the in-between and showing up as honestly as ever. For the doubters and skeptics who have sharp questions for God and pastor. For those who may have never stepped foot in a church before this one, who feel alien here and are wondering what the heck all this is about. For all of you, may you feel seen, known, valued, and loved. May you find yourself pleasantly surprised by something today. May you leave here more healed, whole, free, and full of grace. May we create as much space here for others who come next as exists for us. Amen. We all rise and let's sing together. For old, a place at the table. a place at the table, a covenant shared, a welcoming space, a rainbow of grace and gender and color, for gay and for straight, a childless embrace. And God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy, compassion and peace. Yes, God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy. For everyone born, a place at the table, to live without fear and simply to be, to work, to speak out, to witness and worship. For everyone born, the right to be free. Amen. We're so glad you're here. Yes, you can take a seat and relax.
Well, good morning.
That was a good one this morning.
It was a slow build, but we eventually got
that was
there.
good.
It is so good to be with you on this cool, crisp, somewhat damp, I almost said October, fall morning. My name's Jeremy. I'm the pastor here at the Grove, Cottage Grove, and we are a new church that exists to grow goodness. And so we hope that simply your presence here with us today, or you're watching with us online, or somehow your interaction with us during the week is somehow nurturing healing, wholeness, and beauty in your life.
I'd like to turn your attention to the handout. Inside the handout, there is different ways to give, online, in person. There's also Venmo. And then we also have a little sheet that you can fill out to let us know whether you're a regular here, you're visiting, and if you want any volunteer opportunities, such as children's ministry, that huge community event that we have coming up that we may need volunteers for. But you can fill it out and we'll contact you. And it also has information about our kids ministry, Grove Kids. And, oh, that didn't sound good. There's also a handout. Is it me?
Can we mute Anna and I'll give her my mic?
Oh, man. Oh, I always screw this up. Sorry, guys. So, there's also... No. It's not me for the first time. Yeah, we'll just... All right. So we also have a handout in the back of the pews, indicating if you're here for the first time, if you could fill out the Grove Kids sheet. If your kid's going to Grove Kids, it has contact information. That way we can contact you in case your kiddo needs something. But it also gives us good information about who's here.
Okay, I only have one hand, but with your two hands, you have the worship hand, or the insert in one hand, and then on the back side of the worship handout, we have our three most important things. Usually, we would come back to these at the end of the service and give you all of the information then. However, we want to end on a certain note that doesn't get ruined by a bunch of logistics and announcements, and so we're going to give you all of this information up front. So again, on the backhand side of your worship handout, these are the three things that we're really trying to key in on this month and in this season. The first one is our stewardship campaign. 3 times a year, we have campaigns that ask for donations that help us to continue to do our ministry, help us to continue to grow goodness. And in the fall, that is our stewardship campaign, which is asking for pledges for the year ahead. So what that means is it allows us to plan for the year ahead. What are we going to be capable of doing? Secondly, as those who consider this their church home, it also allows you to plan out your own personal budget and your giving as well. Immediately following the service today, we are having a meeting it's meant for our partners, those who consider the Cottage Grove to be their church home. Everybody is welcome, but we're going to be spending a little bit extra time it won't be this afternoon, immediately following the service to talk through what does it mean for us in this season to continue to have the capacity to grow and to extend our table for more and more people to grow goodness. So again, that's happening immediately after the service today. Everybody is welcome. If you're not yet a partner, though, you do not yet consider this to be your church home, it might feel a little bit like a family conversation that you're sitting in on, and that is completely fine. You're welcome to attend, and that might be the prompt for you to take the next step to become a partner if you consider the Cottage Grove to be your church home. If that is the case, or if you're interested in more information about what it means to be a partner, you can fill out the worship insert, and then on the back there is a box that says becoming a partner. You can check that and then drop it in the basket at the back of the worship center after the service. The last thing is the pop-up pumpkin patch. Oof, it's coming up, folks. This is our biggest event of the year, happening on October 14th. We have over 3,000 people who have shown interest on Facebook. It is an excellent opportunity for us to do something fun, for us to expose the community to what we are all about. And we need a lot of people to be able to pull that off. Fortunately, a lot of you have already said, I'm willing to help with that. However, we will take as many hands as we can get. So if you are one of those people who are like, I can show up early and get things set up, or I can show up late and get things cleaned up, or I can help with a game or activity during the event, you can go to that link, scan that QR code, and sign up. And yes, we will find a way to get you involved to help us be able to pull that event off. Okay, that's a lot. Connection point. You want me to do it? Oh, you know.
Okay, now it's the introvert's least favorite part of the service. And, okay. What is your favorite movie sub-genre? Like 90s, what'd you say, Hugh Grant? 90s, or Freddie Prinze Jr.?
Okay, so this is my question that I throw out here. So there's like your favorite type of movie, maybe you like comedies, but your favorite subgenre is like really specific, like I like early 2000 romantic comedies starring Hugh Grant. Maybe you don't have one of those and you're just like, I like comedies. I don't know. But this is just an opportunity for you to connect with people around you, to get up, move around a little bit, and make some sort of connection. We'll have you stand up, find somebody next to you you don't know or don't know very well, introduce yourself, and then you can discuss that question, and we'll reconvene in just a few minutes.
Say something. All right, you can bring it back in, and we're going to go ahead and sing our kids out. So, Grove kids, if you're going out there today, you can follow Miss Chelsea and other lovely adults out to Grove Kids Time, and we'll sing you on your way. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world, every color, shape, and type, they are precious in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. Yeah. All right, y'all, can you stand and sing with us again, or rise as you're able? You can hold my hand when you need to let go. I can be a mountain when you're feeling valley low. I can be a street light showing you the way home. You can hold my hand when you need to let go. And I want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. Let us take on the world while we're young and able, and bring us back together when the day is done. If we want a garden, we're gonna have to sow the seeds, plant a little happiness, let the roots run deep. If it's love that we give, then it's love that we reap. If we want a garden, we're gonna have to sow the seeds. And I want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. Let us take on the world while we're young and able, to bring us back together when the day is done. The door is always open, your picture's on my wall. Everyone's a little broken, and everyone belongs. Yes, everyone belongs. And I want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. Let's take on the world while we're young and able, and bring us back together when the day is done. And bring us back together when the day is done. All right, y'all can have a seat.
Okay. Different microphone. Sounding good, much better. And if I need to grab that one, I will. Okay, so I'm just gonna lay my cards out here. One of the first things that I do every week is I try to find the opening illustration that fits with the theme for the day. And so today's theme is about someone who finds themselves in a place that they don't belong, and what their reaction is, and what the people who think they belong's reaction is. So I had this theme going in, and again, this is usually one of the first things that I'm able to figure out. some sort of illustration that is going to really quickly grab people's attention and kind of help you understand where we're going for the day. I had a really hard time figuring it out this week. I have no idea why, but it was like my brain was completely locked down. Could not figure it out. So I usually start with, well, do I have a personal example of a time where I have felt this? Could not think of something for myself. Do I know someone, is there someone who's really close to me who has this really good, compelling story of something like that? Could not think of it. Okay, well then I go to like pop culture. Maybe there's a movie or song or something like that. And I could not figure it out. It wasn't until yesterday morning when I finally got it down. And the reason is, I realized, my goodness, this was like a whole subgenre of sports movies from the time when I was growing up. This idea of someone who finds himself in a place where they don't belong. Can you think of a sports movie from like the late 80s, early 90s that fits with this theme? So like, there's Karate Kid. There's A League of Their Own. There's Rudy. And then there's my favorite. You know what it is? Cool Runnings. Any Cool Running? I can hear there's Cool Runnings fans out here. Oh my goodness, I absolutely loved Cool Runnings growing up. If you do, if you don't know the story of Cool Runnings, so the story, or at least as the movie tells the real story, in 1988, there was a Jamaican bobsled team, which made no sense. It's Jamaica, right? But they entered the Calgary Olympics as a Jamaican bobsled team. So they show up in Canada, and they understand themselves, like, this is not a place where we would typically belong. And as the story goes, everybody else who's there kind of makes it clear to them, oh, you don't belong here either. So, for instance, the East German team, who are like the team to beat, they make it really clear that these Jamaicans do not belong. Even some of the Olympic judges make it clear that they don't belong, and they try to get them disqualified in the process. Well, the further it goes along, actually, the Jamaicans, they realize that they don't belong, and they try to do some of the things that you would expect from the teams that belong, and they don't find success by doing those things. They actually do worse as a result. What they really need to do, and where they finally find some level of success and like a place where they feel like, all right, they can be themselves in this unfamiliar setting, is when they just lean into, we're the weirdos. So we're going to do our thing, and then if we get invited back, if we find a place where we belong, great. And as a result, they don't necessarily find success, but they eventually find that they are being true to themselves, and as a result of them being true to themselves, even though it was a place where they don't belong, they're able to then find a place, a setting where people are then able to come back and say, all right, well, these weirdos actually might belong with us as well, even and especially because they are different. So again, this was like a subgenre. It wasn't just this movie. This was a subgenre growing up. We love these movies. I absolutely love these movies. These were the movies that we watched all of the time because it's a feel-good type of story, right? These people who didn't belong, who suddenly find a place of belonging in a setting where they weren't necessarily invited. And yet, as I thought back on it, like, how often are we more like the East Germans, or like those Olympic referees who are actually in the position of, we're the ones who belong here, and you unexpected folks have no business being here? More often than not, I think we find ourselves in that position than in the position of the Jamaican bobsled team. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We are in the midst of a series that we're calling Crowded Table, and we are looking at what it means for us to be welcoming of all people and what it actually requires for us to make space to welcome people. This is a really good analogy. It feels like a good analogy, like preparing a table for people to be able to be welcomed. And yet in the ancient world, this was like a very literal type of thing. You only had meals, you only sat down around a table with people that you were okay with,
or that you wanted to be aligned with. And so we have, throughout this series, been going back to these stories about the life of Jesus and the teachings of Jesus, and specifically talking through these stories where he is gathered around a table with people. He is extending his, what was called table fellowship. And what we find is that Jesus is willing, happy to extend the table and invite people into meals with him, regardless of who they are or where they're from. And that sounds fantastic, and yet what we have seen time and time again is that there are a lot of people who do not find that fantastic. So 2 weeks ago, each of the last 2 weeks, we've been talking about the Pharisees, this group of people who took the scriptures very seriously and took the rules, especially around table fellowship, very literally. And we see that again today when Jesus shows up for yet another meal, and the people who are unexpectedly found around the table, Pharisees aren't so happy about that. So we're going to pick up yet another story from the Gospel according to Luke, one of the 4 biographies about the life of Jesus. This is in Luke chapter 7, and it's going to be up here on the screen behind me. Just a little bit of a heads up, it's a little bit longer, but we have it broken up with chunks, so hopefully you'll be able to follow along. Now, one of the Pharisees asked Jesus to have dinner with him. So he went into the Pharisee's house and took his place at the table. Then, when a woman of that town, who was a sinner, learned that Jesus was dining at the Pharisee's house, she brought an alabaster jar of perfumed oil. As she stood behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. She wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and anointed them with the perfumed oil. Now, when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would know who and what kind of woman this is who is touching him, that she is a sinner." So Jesus answered him, "Simon, I have something to say to you." He replied, "Say it, teacher." A certain creditor had 2 debtors. He owed him 5,000 silver coins and the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debts of both. Now, which one of them will love him more? Simon answered, "I suppose the one who had the bigger debt canceled." Jesus said to him, "You have judged rightly." Then, turning toward the woman, he said to Simon, "Do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss of greeting, but from the time I entered, she has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with perfumed oil. Therefore, I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven. Thus she loved much, but the one who is forgiven little loves little." Then Jesus said to her, "Your sins are forgiven." But those who were at the table with him began to say among themselves, "Who is this who even forgives sins?" He said to the woman, "Your faith has saved you. Go in peace." So again, Jesus is at another meal, and he is with another Pharisee. And it is while he is at this meal, and it is while he is with this Pharisee, that the literal translation kind of goes like this. Lo and behold, a woman shows up. And this woman, lo and behold, is known to be a sinner. This is one of the rare stories that actually appears in all of the biographies about the life of Jesus that we have in the Bible. And each one is a little bit different because each of them is written by a different person with a different purpose to a different audience. And yet each and every one talks about this woman being a sinner. Often throughout the years, it has become implied, assumed, this woman was a prostitute. Nowhere in this story are we told that this woman is a prostitute. As we've seen over the last several weeks, there's lots of ways, especially in the eyes of the Pharisees who took the scriptures very seriously and the rules very literally. There's lots of different ways that you can get called a sinner. One of them is just by interacting with people who are not Jewish. Another is simply by, like Jesus, having a meal with someone who you're not supposed to have a meal with. There are lots of different ways to get labeled a sinner that have nothing to do with being a prostitute. Just because she's a woman and she's labeled a sinner does not mean that she is a prostitute. The second thing to know is that the thing that she does when she shows up, so she shows up and her hair is all disheveled, and she goes and she starts crying and covering Jesus' feet with tears and then anointing them with oil. This is sometimes seen as like an erotic act because, of course, she's a prostitute, so she's doing this erotic act. And yet that is not at all what is happening in this story. In the ancient world, often women were expected to have their hair up. In the ancient world, in the Greek Roman context, when someone had their hair down, it was often a sign of either grief or gratitude. And so this woman shows up unexpectedly, knowing that she is, by all intents and purposes, by everybody's calculation, she is not supposed to be there. And yet she is welcomed by Jesus. She is not sent away. No wonder she responds the way that she does. No wonder her hair is down. She's crying for crying out loud. This is not like an erotic act. This is someone who knows that they are not supposed to be there, who has no sense of this is something that she deserves, and yet she's welcomed there anyways. Of course that she responds with not only grief but gratitude for the very fact that she is being allowed to be there. This is like super beautiful thing, right? The Pharisees disagree. Pharisees disagree quite loudly. And they make it clear she is not supposed to be here. Again, the Pharisees, these religious leaders, took the scriptures very seriously, and they took the rules very literally. And she breaks a ton of rules just by showing up. Okay, let's count them. Number one, she's a woman in a place where there's just supposed to be men. Strike one. She shows up unexpectedly, uninvited. Strike two. She does so with like all sorts of disheveled, and then she then breaks this alabaster jar with perfume. Apparently, this was something that was super expensive at the time. So she does this thing which is uncalled for, basically. She's being wasteful. And then she touches the feet, or she's just touching a man who is not her husband. Strike 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many strikes do you get in baseball? Less than 5, right? Less than 5. Over and over and over again, she's breaking every single one of these rules. She's not supposed to be there. She's proving that she does not belong. And the Pharisees are so upset about this. The man who's hosting this meal is so upset about this. And what I really want to point out here is what he explicitly says. This is in verse 39. Now, when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who and what kind of woman this is who's touching him, that she is a sinner. Can you hear the disgust in his voice? Can you almost imagine the disgust on his face? Now, I want to note, like, the disgust is, there's two different places where this disgust is being placed. He is placing this disgust, yes, on this woman who has no right to be here. She has broken all the rules at a place where she wasn't supposed to be anyways. How dare she? But what's more than that, he is also directing the disgust at Jesus. If he were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman this is. How dare he? Several years ago, I was was listening to a sermon that was given by a pastor who was in the midst of a series about sexuality. And of course, within a series about sexuality in a conservative church, you got to do at least one sermon on homosexuality. And within this discussion of homosexuality, this pastor said that the way that you know it is wrong is by your gag reflex. Okay? So how you know that something is wrong is that when you see it, you have such disgust that you almost like gag in your mouth. I could not believe that. So for the first thing, like there's this idea that this specific person believes in the total depravity of humans, which means that no matter how hard humans work, we can't get it right. So why would we trust our gag reflex? That's number one. But secondly, like, what amount of things over the course of human history and even now can we get away with saying are disgusting? And that becomes our out for welcoming anybody who is other than us. Simply because it is different, it becomes seen as disgusting. And yet we do it over and over and over again. It becomes like the filter through which we say whether something is right or wrong. And this is the filter through which these Pharisees say that thing is different, that person is different, she is not supposed to be here, she does not belong, that is disgusting, and Jesus is disgusting for even being willing to welcome her. I suppose it doesn't really impact that pastor at all. What does it matter to him? Because, you know, he's white, straight, cisgender Christian man who's welcome in basically any setting. And it probably doesn't matter a whole lot to a Pharisee either, who's hosting a dinner. He gets to choose who is welcome and who is not welcome, right? But you know who it really mattered to? You know who it meant the world to? That woman. That woman who had all of these places, all of these ways in which she was told, and it was reiterated time and time again, she did not belong. She was welcomed in that place. Of course she responded the way that she did. Of course she was crying. Of course she was trying to figure out, she was so appreciative just of being able to be there. Of course she responded like she did. And, of course, this Pharisee responded the way that he did as well. Apparently his name is Simon. Of course this host responded the way that he did because he was convinced that he deserved it. She did not. He was okay. She was not. So, of course, he responded with disgust. Of course, he responded with, we got to shut this thing down, close the doors, get everybody out who does not belong. This is like the history of the church, folks. For 2,000 years, followers of Jesus have often done very similar types of things. From the very beginning, even when Jesus was around, many of Jesus' followers were trying to make the table as narrow as possible. It was like Jesus' closest followers were the bouncers to his party. And they were trying to restrict the number and the type of people who were allowed to be close to him. And yet Jesus was there, and so Jesus was able to push back and say, no, they are all welcome. And they kind of went along with it because are they going to say no to Jesus? And yet, when Jesus was gone, when he was no longer with them, we can see his followers over and over and over again in the years and decades and centuries afterwards, continuing to try to limit who is welcome at that table, who is expected at that table. Who's welcome? Are women welcome as full members at this table? No. Children? Absolutely not. People of different cultures and races? People of different sexualities? God, no. People of different cultural or political persuasions? Absolutely not. This is something that time and time and time again, followers of Jesus have tried to get as restrictive as possible. These are the ones who are welcome and are okay to have around our table. And yet, not nearly as often, but also on a semi-regular basis, those who are open to hearing something new and doing something different. There have been followers of Jesus who have said, what if rather than following all the customs and the rules around who is excluded, how can we instead not only extend our table, but pull up a chair for somebody else as well? Are women welcome? Yeah, why wouldn't they be? Children? Of course they're welcome. People of differing cultures and races? Yeah. People of differing sexualities? Absolutely. People of different cultural and political persuasions? Yeah, it might get a little bit tricky at times, but yeah, they're welcome as well. I don't know about you, but I sure want to be in that second camp. I sure want to be the type of person and want to be within a type of church that makes the table not only longer, but starts pulling up chairs as well for all of the unexpected guests. So as we continue this series, as we continue to be this church in this community, a church that exists to grow goodness, may we do just that. May we make space for people, even and especially when they are different from us. May we not just push them to the sides. May we not close the door on them. May we open the door. May we extend the table. May we especially and even bring up a chair beside us so that they can participate fully as people who are not only welcome, but deserving. May that be so.
Well, speaking of finding God in unexpected places and unexpected places, I want to share with you a song I've been dying to share with you guys for about like a year now. It's a song called Raise Up by an artist named Semler. Can we get Semler's picture up there? Semler is queer, Semler is non-binary, and Semler became a very unexpected member of the Christian music community a couple years ago. They're an indie artist. They've been putting out music since the 20-teens, but it wasn't until they got on TikTok a couple years ago and said, hey, I'm about to release this album. It's called Preacher's Kid. It's about my experience growing up in an evangelical Christian church and how painful that was for me, and I got a lot of feelings about it, and I also still love Jesus and believe in God and believe that I am still a part of the Christian community. So I'm going to release this album as a Christian album. Let's see what happens. Well, it went viral, and like tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people started following Semler on TikTok, started pushing and promoting this album, and it went huge, at least in the Christian music world, huge. So as you know, Christian music artists, they work under Christian music labels. Those labels are very limiting in who the types of artists they bring on under their labels usually. It's very homogenous. But Semler is an indie artist, so Semler was able to list their album when they put it up on the internet. They were able to list it as a Christian album. And then they released the album, and it was so successful and like rose to #1 on the Christian music charts for a minute, for like at least 2 or 3 days. Semler was up there above Lauren Daigle and then Chris Tomlin and these other like massive, massive artists in the Christian music industry. And it was so cool to see how many people resonated with Semler's story and were like, that's my story too. I have also come from a painful past within the Christian church, but still love Jesus and believe in God. Lots of queer Christians, of course, resonated with this. It was so cool to see how in this subversive way Semler entered the Christian music world. And the album is not one you want to listen to with your kids. Like, it's explicit language, it's very angry, it's very honest, but it is incredible, incredible music that deserves to be out there and be represented as a part of the Christian experience, because so many of us have experienced that. And it's cool to see how, like the woman in the scripture story, how similar sort of broke the rules and showed up anyways in this environment where they were not allowed and not welcome, and were sort of took it on head on and like very successfully. Very cool. Now, for a church like ours, a community like ours, finding the presence of God in a queer person, not revolutionary. We all, for the most part, I think all of us would be like, yeah, queer people can be Christians. Yeah, God shows up in everybody. But this is obviously not a part of the Christian music industry. So is a pretty cool way that Semler sort of subversively said, God is in me too, and my experience is valid. Then last year, Semler, they've been releasing singles ever since. Some are just about life and relationships, and some are very, very worshipful. And they released this song called Raise Up, which is written, the lyrics are written from the perspective of God. And to hear a song that is God's voice to us, sung by a queer, non-binary person, is, as far as the music industry goes, revolutionary. And now we see more and more indie artists coming out who do not fall into this homogenous nature of Christian music world, who are saying, like, my experience is valid, God is in me too. And it's so beautiful to see that start happening. So I want to, unfortunately, Semler can't be here today to sing this themselves. That would be ideal, but you got us today. So I really, really hope that you go listen to Semler's music online. They even released a song this year that I think was like the best worship song of 2023. And their music is incredible, so go listen. But for today, we're going to sing Raise Up for you. This is God's voice to you through Semler. Bring me your weak and weary. Bring me your strange and cold. I come for hope and feel that you won't feel alone. So raise up, raise up, raise up. So raise up, raise up. So raise up, raise up, raise up. I have told you that I am the way and the truth and the life. I am justice, I am all that is right. Carry on now, carry on. Carry on now. And there's a galaxy behind your eyes. And there's a war in your house. And there's a meaning that is far beyond us. And there is courage in doubt. So raise up, raise up, raise up. So raise up, raise up. So raise up, raise up, raise up. I have told you that I am the way and the truth and the life. I am justice, I am all that is right. Carry on now, carry on. Carry on now. So raise up, raise up, raise up. So raise up, raise up. So raise up, raise up, raise up. I have told you that I am the way and the truth and the life. I am justice, I am all that is right. Carry on now, carry on. Carry on now. And I am the way and the truth and the life. So raise up, raise up, raise up. So raise up, raise up. So raise up, raise up, raise up. So raise up, raise up.
Just a really quick reminder that if you're one of our partners, or if you're curious about partnership, if you consider the Grove to be your church home and you want to be involved in the conversation that we're about to have, we're going to reconvene in here maybe in like 15 minutes, start talking about what does it require of us to expand our capacity to continue to grow goodness and make space for more and more people. Regardless of the way you arrived here this morning, it was great to be with you. I hope that just your presence here helped to nurture some healing, wholeness, and beauty in your life on this morning. So as we go, I will have you stand and as you're able and extend your arms to receive this blessing. And I wrote it down because I wanted to make sure I get it right. As we go, may we be the type of people and the type of church that experiences the collective joy of people who appreciate life and faith as a gift. May we be the type of people who show up all disheveled and invite others to do the same. May we be those who always err on the side of love. And may we be people who squeeze in a little closer and say, of course, there's room for you here. May that be so.